Silicilla was the kind of town time forgot. Tucked between overgrown rice paddies and quiet mountain fog in the province of Quezon, it was a place where even the breeze moved slowly. The people there knew the language of silence, spoken through glances, nods, and the closing of windows at dusk. Old stories lingered in the cracks of the bamboo walls, passed through generations and half-remembered whispers. And inside one of the oldest houses in town, a boy named Enzo sat very, very still. 5 years old and motherless, Enzo had moved into the home of his grandmother, Lala Nina, after the tragedy that no one spoke of. His father's body was never found. His mother's casket had been closed. At the funeral, Enzo said nothing. Not even when they lowered her into the earth. He was a quiet child, unsettlingly so. He never laughed, never cried, never asked why his parents were gone, but he always watched. He sat on the bannig mat each day, eyes fixed on the shadows beneath his Lola's wooden bed, where the light from the window never quite reached. And at night, when the frogs sang and the wind rattled the banana leaves outside, the boy would whisper. No one ever heard the full words, but they saw his lips move. And when Lola Nana finally asked him, one humid evening as she folded his blanket, Anak, who are you talking to? Enzo looked up at her, eyes distant. His small voice barely rose above a murmur. The man under the bed. Lola blinked, then chuckled nervously. Naku, Anak. Don't scare Lola like that. There's no one under there. She bent down, joints cracking, and peered beneath the bed frame. Dust, slippers, an old ball Enzo no longer played with. Nothing out of place. She exhaled and ruffled his hair. Just your imagination, Si, Walang Dao, Enzo. But Enzo didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. Instead, he raised one thin arm and pointed, not to his bed. There was nothing but a rolled-up bannig, a crumpled pair of tsinlas, and a spider spinning a sleepy web. Not to the shadows beneath his feet, but to her bed, watching. Not mine, he whispered. His bed is under yours. He had been through so much. The trauma, the loss. Grief did strange things to children. It was a thin crawl space, not enough for even a cat to turn over. Sometimes he wouldn't speak for hours. But every night, just before bedtime, he would return to that same spot beside Lola's bed. Just an ordinary shadow under an ordinary piece of furniture. The floorboards groaned under Lola Nina's feet as she stood by her bed, staring at the narrow darkness underneath. She bent down again, more slowly this time, flashlight in hand. She swept the light beneath, from corner to corner. See? Nothing. Walang Dao, Enzo. She called out, trying to sound firm. But Enzo didn't respond. When she turned around, she found him already sitting by the foot of the bed, legs crossed, fingers resting on the wooden floor like he was waiting. She tried to shake off the unease. It was probably just the boy's way of coping. Still later that night, she found herself sleeping with the lights on. The days passed with a growing sense of unease. Enzo became more distant. He ate less and less, pushing aside his rice with his spoon, always whispering. Silicilla was the kind of town time forgot. Tucked between overgrown rice paddies and quiet mountain fog in the province of Quezon, it was a place where even the breeze moved slowly. The people there knew the language of silence, spoken through glances, nods, and the closing of windows at dusk. Old stories lingered in the cracks of the bamboo walls, passed through generations and half-remembered whispers. And inside one of the oldest houses in town, a boy named Enzo sat very, very still. 5 years old and motherless, Enzo had moved into the home of his grandmother, Lala Nina, after the tragedy that no one spoke of. His father's body was never found. His mother's casket had been closed. At the funeral, Enzo said nothing. Not even when they lowered her into the earth. He was a quiet child, unsettlingly so. He never laughed, never cried, never asked why his parents were gone, but he always watched. He sat on the bannig mat each day, eyes fixed on the shadows beneath his Lola's wooden bed, where the light from the window never quite reached. And at night, when the frogs sang and the wind rattled the banana leaves outside, the boy would whisper. No one ever heard the full words, but they saw his lips move. And when Lola Nana finally asked him, one humid evening as she folded his blanket, Anak, who are you talking to? Enzo looked up at her, eyes distant. His small voice barely rose above a murmur. The man under the bed. Lola blinked, then chuckled nervously. Naku Anak. Don't scare Lola like that. There's no one under there. She bent down, joints cracking, and peered beneath the bed frame. Dust, slippers, an old ball Enzo no longer played with. Nothing out of place. She exhaled and ruffled his hair. Just your imagination, Si, Wolong Dao, Enzo. But Enzo didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. Instead, he raised one thin arm and pointed, not to his bed. There was nothing but a rolled-up band-aid, a crumpled pair of tsinlas, and a spider spinning a sleepy web. Not to the shadows beneath his feet, but to her bed, watching. Not mine, he whispered. His bed is under yours. He had been through so much. The trauma, the loss. Grief did strange things to children. It was a thin crawl space, not enough for even a cat to turn over. Sometimes he wouldn't speak for hours. But every night, just before bedtime, he would return to that same spot beside Lola's bed. Just an ordinary shadow under an ordinary piece of furniture. The floorboards groaned under Lola Nina's feet as she stood by her bed, staring at the narrow darkness underneath. She bent down again, more slowly this time, flashlight in hand. She swept the light beneath, from corner to corner. See? Nothing. Wolong Dao, Enzo. She called out, trying to sound firm. But Enzo didn't respond. When she turned around, she found him already sitting by the foot of the bed, legs crossed, fingers resting on the wooden floor like he was waiting. She tried to shake off the unease. It was probably just the boy's way of coping. Still later that night, she found herself sleeping with the lights on. The days passed with a growing sense of unease. Enzo became more distant. He ate less and less, pushing aside his rice with his spoon. Always whispering, always staring into the same sliver of black. One evening, while stirring Jinnatong maize, Lola gently asked, Enzo, who is this man you talk to, Enzo didn't look at her. He was watching the floor. He has no name anymore. No name? What do you call him then? He said I can call him Kuya if I want. Lola's skin crawled. And what does Kuya want? To stay. That night, she locked every door and window. She placed a crucifix above the bed, one she hadn't touched since her husband's death. She prayed more fervently than she had in years. The first few hours of sleep came like thunder hard and fast. But at 2:16 a.m., she awoke. There was a sound, faint, scratch. Scratch, not on the door, not on the wall. Beneath her. She lay still, barely breathing, ears straining. Scratch, scratch. It was slow, purposeful, like someone was tracing invisible letters across the wood. She reached for her flashlight, heart thumping against her ribs, and slid quietly to the edge of the bed. She held her breath and looked under. Just dust, just shoes, just the same old mat. But something in the air had changed. The room felt too still, like it was holding something back, and then she heard it. Not a noise, not a whisper, but a breath. A slow exhale rasping, wet, and too close. She jerked upright, flashlight trembling in her hand. Enzo, she called out, voice tight. No answer. Anak? She turned toward the doorway, still pale. Enzo stood there. Don't be scared, Lola, he said, voice soft. He likes you. He said your blood smells sweet. Even with the tropical heat just beyond the walls, Lola Nena shivered as she folded her laundry by the window. He just sat in silence now, sometimes under the mango tree, other times in the dark hallway. drawing circles into the floorboards with his fingernail. Her hands fumbled over a pair of Enzo's shorts, mud-stained and torn at the hem. The next morning, the house felt colder than it should have. Her voice softened. "You're always near my room these days. Is something bothering you?" He had stopped playing outside altogether. No more tumbling in the grass. No more chasing butterflies or kicking stones along the dirt path to the well. That morning, as birds chirped over the rustling kogon grass, Lola brought him a plate of tortang talum and rice, setting it gently in front of him. "Eat, Anak," she urged, kneeling beside him. Enzo didn't move. He stared at the floor. Enzo. Still no reply. But just when she was about to stand up, he finally spoke. "He doesn't like the room being empty." Lola paused. "Who doesn't?" "Kuya, the one under the bed." She tried to smile, even as a chill crept across her skin. "Anak, there's no one under there, right? Just dust and old slippers?" Enzo slowly turned to her, eyes heavy. "You didn't see him. Because he let you sleep? Let me?" He was watching. He likes it when you're still. Lola felt the hair on her arms rise. "Enzo, tell Lola the truth. Did someone come into the house?" He shook his head. "No one comes in." He leaned closer. "He was already here, before we came." That night, Lola barely touched her dinner. She sat at the edge of her bed with her rosary clenched in one hand, her other hand resting gently over her chest as if to steady her own heartbeat. The sounds of the house felt louder. The creak of old wood, the sigh of the nipa walls, the gentle tap of leaves against the window. Then the scratching returned. Scratch, ... scratch. Pause, scratch. Lola closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. "Amanaman sumasalinjit ka." But then, beneath the floorboards, just inches from where her feet dangled, a whisper, faint, but unmistakable. "I like it when you pray. It makes the meat softer." With her whole body trembling, she grabbed the flashlight again. Shining the light under the bed, she expected hope to find nothing. Instead, the beam caught a hand. Just for a moment. Dark-skinned, long-fingered, curled around the leg of the bed frame. Then it retreated, vanishing into the shadows without a sound. Lola gasped and fell backward, her rosary scattering across the floor. Enzo came running from the hallway. "Lola!" She grabbed his shoulders, gripping him tightly. "Anak, we have to go. We need to get out right now." But Enzo didn't flinch. He looked past her, toward the bed. "He's mad now." "Who?" "Because you saw his hand." "Enzo, we're leaving. Do you hear me?" Lola's chest tightened. But Enzo just smiled. "You can't leave, Lola." "Not yet." Her body felt heavy, limbs sore as if she'd been carrying sacks of rice in her sleep. Her tongue was dry and thick in her mouth, and her breathing came ragged. "Why not?" "Because he's inside." The roosters hadn't even started crowing when Lola Nena jolted awake. The pale blue glow of dawn hadn't yet breached the wooden slats of the window. The silence in the house was absolute. Not even the usual chirping of the tickling birds. There was a pain just behind her right eye, a slow, pulsing throb, as though whatever was down there was trying hard to breathe through thick mucus. She touched her forehead and winced. The skin was hot, tight. The room was still dim. Nothing. Then a breath. Not hers. It came from beneath the bed, wet, strained. Her fingers tightened around her rosary, but her other hand instinctively reached for the flashlight. It was always on her knitstand. Only it wasn't. She patted the surface blindly. She sat up, head swimming, and her eyes dropped to the floor. The flashlight was lying just at the edge of the bed. And then it rolled. Straight underneath, Lola's throat went dry. A part of her mind screamed, "Don't look. Just stay in bed. Pray. Close your eyes." But the rest, the part that had survived widowing, poverty, raising children on her own, made her swing her legs over the bed and kneel. She whispered to herself as she bent low, "Walang layman, walang layman." But the second her face met the dark space under the bed, she stopped breathing because the light was on. The flashlight had landed on its side, its beam piercing the shadows. And there, illuminated by the beam, was something carved into the wooden floorboards. "Stay still." The letters were crude, scratched, like made by nails. And just beneath the final word, a black strand of hair curled slowly, twitching as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. His eyes were dull, like someone had smeared fog inside them. Suddenly, a soft voice whispered from behind her, "Lola." She flinched and turned, nearly falling back. Enzo was standing in the doorway. But something was wrong with him. His posture was stiff, arms hanging too low at his sides. "Enzo," she breathed. "You dropped your flashlight," he said. "Anak, don't come inside. He doesn't like it when you move too much." "Enzo, please." He said, "Your bones are like paxi tender and soft." Her blood turned to ice. She lunged forward, grabbed the flashlight, and turned it off. When she looked back up, Enzo was gone. The sun finally rose, but it brought no comfort. That morning, Lola didn't prepare breakfast. She sat at the table, gripping the rosary until her knuckles ached. And Enzo, he was in the hallway, drawing with a piece of chalk. Circles, again and again. Teeth. But this time, there were symbols inside. Triangles. Eyes. She leaned over and asked softly, "Enzo, where did you learn those?" He shrugged. "He drew them in my dreams." "And what do they mean?" Enzo looked up, and for the first time, there was fear in his voice. "They're not for me." "Then who?" Enzo hesitated, then whispered, "They're for the ones who come next." The wind over Silicilla had changed. The banana leaves no longer danced in rhythm, they twitched. The air that once smelled of rice smoke and guava blossoms now carried something sour, like rotting salt or stagnant water left in the dark. Even the dogs barked less. And when they did, it was only toward one direction. Lola Nina's house. She hadn't left in days. She tried. She would put on her duster, tie her hair into a neat bun, even slip into her worn-out slippers. But then she'd find herself back at the bed, kneeling beside it, listening. The floor spoke to her now. Creaks and patterns, breathing in rhythms. Sometimes a low clicking noise like teeth tapping together just beneath the wood. She told herself it was the termites again. But termites didn't whisper your name in a voice that sounded like your dead husband. That morning, she made a decision. She walked to the old palanquin, palms sweating, rosary tucked tightly in her bolsa. People stared as she passed. She found her way to a small shack behind the stalls, almost hidden by hanging garlic, dried tuyo, and banana crates. The door was cracked open, the interior thick with incense. She coughed once, then called out, "Byring." A shape moved in the smoke. Aling Byring emerged, her skin like old wax, eyes sunken deep, irises cloudy gray. "You waited too long to come," the old woman said flatly. She reached into a small wooden chest and pulled out a pouch wrapped in katsa, tied with a strand of human hair. "You know, everyone knows, but they pretend not to." Lola trembled, from before the missionaries came. "It sleeps under stillness. It mimics the forgotten. Something's in my house." "With my grandson," Byring said nothing. "It's a Pesapala." "A what? Old Delongo?" "When it speaks, it doesn't use voice, it uses memory." "Then why Enzo?" Byring leaned closer. "Because he listened." They sat in silence. Byring lit a black candle and let the wax drip onto the floor. "It chooses children. Loneliness draws it." "How do we stop it?" Lola asked, voice shaking. "You don't stop it," Byring said coldly. "You bind it." "No, I won't give it another child." "How?" "You offer it another." "Another what?" "Another vessel, someone willing." Lola stood. Byring shook her head. "It doesn't want another child." "Not anymore. It wants you." Later that evening, Lola returned home in a daze, clutching the pouch Byring gave her. It smelled of Camangan, salt, and ash. She entered the house. The air was still. Enzo sat cross-legged in the hallway, humming an old lullaby she hadn't taught him. He looked up at her slowly. "Did you see the old woman?" he asked. "Yes, he said you would." "What else did he say?" Enzo smiled faintly. "He said he left something for you." She blinked. "What?" Enzo stood, walked past her to the kitchen table, and pointed. There, in the center, was a bundle of long black hair, curled like a sleeping snake. Her stomach dropped. "That's not mine." There were bruises she couldn't remember getting and faint cuts along her arms, almost like scratches. She splashed cold water on her face again and again, but it did nothing to wash off the chill crawling beneath her skin. "He pulled too hard when he climbed inside," Enzo said. "Inside what, Enzo?" She asked in a cracking voice. Enzo looked up at her, face suddenly empty. "Inside you, Lola." Lola Nina locked herself in the bathroom that night. The pouch from Aling Byring sat on the porcelain sink, its blackened twine slightly damp from her trembling grip. Her fingers trembled as she stared into the cracked mirror above the sink. She hadn't really looked at herself in days. Her cheeks had hollowed. Her eyes were darker, not just from fatigue. Her skin looked grayer, waxy. "Inside you," Enzo had said. She gritted her teeth. "No," she whispered. "He can't be." Then the mirror blinked. Not her, not her eyelids. "Are you okay?" Her reflection blinked before she did. Lola stumbled back, a cry escaping her throat. And in that instant, her reflection smiled, not warmly, not with kindness. Its lips pulled unnaturally wide until the corners cracked. Its teeth were too sharp. The pupils, no longer round, had turned vertical, like a goat's. Behind her, nothing moved. But the reflection reached forward. She slammed the bathroom door shut, heart pounding. Outside, Enzo's voice drifted through the hallway. "Lola," she didn't answer. Not because she didn't want to, but because she was too afraid he might be using Enzo's voice now. Instead, she pressed her back to the door and closed her eyes, repeating the prayer Aling Byring had whispered to her. "Lumayas ka sa tahanang ito. Hindi ka na mayugad sa layman and hendio. Lumayas ka datat lumayas ka." But then something answered from beneath the sink. Not in words, not in whispers. In clicks, sharp rhythmic clicks, like fingernails tapping porcelain, or teeth chattering in glee. Click, 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 click. And then a breath, wet, close. The hallway grew darker with every footstep. Right behind her ear, she spun around, hand clutching the pouch like a weapon. Nothing was there. But when she looked down at the drain of the sink, she saw water rising from below, slowly bubbling. Entangled in the drain, drifting like seaweed in dark water, was another long strand of black hair. She burst out of the bathroom, nearly slipping on the hall's wooden floor. Enzo stood at the far end, still humming that awful tune. The lullabies she hadn't taught him, they echoed faintly through the quiet trees, skipping past the rice fields and trickling into the cracks of wooden homes. "You're not Enzo," she muttered. He tilted his head. "Then who am I?" 4 Sundays since Enzo had sat on the woven mat up front, humming quietly during the liturgy like he used to. "I don't know." He said if you won't accept him, he'll keep digging. "Digging?" Enzo stepped closer. "He's looking for the softest part of you, the part that still remembers grief. Stop it, but now." He said that's the door. That's how he fits inside. Lola fell to her knees, sobbing into her hands. But from the other side of the room, a voice not Enzo's whispered, "Too late." Sunday came, and Silicilla's chapel bells rang through the thick, humid air. But they never reached Lola Nina's house. Father Damaso, the town's aging priest, stood at the altar with trembling fingers, flipping through his worn Missal Romano, but his eyes weren't on the words. They were on the back pew. It had been 4 Sundays since Lola Nina last attended Mass. He had baptized Enzo, He had heard his mother's final confession before she jumped from the second floor of their Manila apartment. He had buried her, sealed in a closed casket. My son said she wasn't inside. Enzo's father had whispered during the burial, glassy-eyed. He said something else wore her skin. Father Damaso had dismissed it then as madness, grief, or guilt. Now the old dread had returned. He walked up to the pulpit after the service, the sunlight slanting through the stained glass windows, casting red crosses across his robe. He cleared his throat. Before you leave, Mka Capita, I ask for your prayers. There's trouble in our barangay. We must be vigilant. Evil is cunning. It wears innocent faces. The congregation shifted uncomfortably. Eyes darted. Everyone knew who he meant. It waits. It mimics. It settles beneath floorboards and inside children's songs. If your home no longer feels like yours, leave it. If your dreams are not your own, wake up. We're a town that forgets quickly, he continued, voice rising. But evil does not. His hands gripped the pulpit tightly. And whatever you do, his voice cracked, do not look under the bed. Later that day, a woman named Mananjalita, one of the church volunteers, approached him with a box of old parish records. Father, these were in the back room. I think you should see them. Claimed the presence lived under the bed of his grandmother's house. Inside were brittle pages from the early 1900s, torn baptism lists, death records, prayer requests, and then clipped between two yellowed sheets, a single report handwritten in calligraphy ink. April 13th, 1912. Child missing. Mother found dead, hanging from ceiling. Child had been speaking to unseen presence. Father Damaso's heart thudded. Same house. Same story, but the name, Inocencio. The priest stared at the document long after sundown. It wasn't just Enzo. This had happened before. This had happened many times. And each time, no one remembered. No one spoke of it, except the thing under the bed, because it never left. The next morning, Father Damaso rose before dawn. Inside the sacristy, the flickering candlelight cast crypt shadows on the walls as he prepared the tools of his calling, not for mass, but for something older. The church was so cloaked in fog, the air thick with dew, and dropped in 3 crushed salt crystals from the exorcism stash hidden beneath the altar. Then he whispered the Latin rites, not the modern ones, but the old formulas, the kind the Vatican had once tried to bury after the war. He pulled out the oldest brass container he had, filled it with holy water from the font. As he did, the water trembled in its bowl, a sign, he thought grimly. Something is listening. He took the vial, his worn crucifix, and a page of protective psalms. And for the first time in years, he approached Lola Nina's house. The front gate squealed as he opened it. The air smelled musty like mildew and something sweet and rotting, like spoiled fruit mixed with iron. The house was oddly quiet. No birds, no dogs barking. Just the crunch of dry leaves beneath his feet. He stepped up to the door and knocked. No answer. His arms were wrapped around his knees, and he rocked gently, whispering something under his breath. He knocked again, harder. The door creaked open. Lola Nena? He called out, voice cautious. It's Father Damaso. Still nothing. The living room was dark despite the morning sun. Curtains had been drawn tight. Lola? A shuffle. To his left. He turned and saw Enzo sitting on the floor, staring at the wall. Enzo? The priest asked, stepping closer. The boy didn't look up. Where's your Lola? Enzo blinked. Slowly. She's hiding. Where? She said she can feel him now, in her bones. The priest felt the hair rise on his neck. He removed the vial from his pocket and flicked a drop of holy water toward Enzo. It hissed, not on the floor. On Enzo's skin. This body's quite small, but I like the way it hums. I think I'll keep it. A thin wisp of steam lifted from where it touched his arm. Enzo winced, but didn't scream. The priest gasped and flung the entire contents of the holy water across the floor. Instead, he looked up. and smiled. "That was rude, Father," he said in a voice too old, too calm, "but I forgive you." The priest backed away, his crucifix raised. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, what are you?" Enzo tilted his head. "Just a visitor." "You're not welcome here. I've always been here." Suddenly, Enzo lunged forward, not with strength, but with unnatural speed. Where it landed, the wood sizzled, the walls shook. A sound erupted from beneath the floorboards, not a scream, but a laugh. Deep, twisting, like 100 voices gurgling through a cracked throat. And just as quickly, it stopped. Enzo collapsed. When Father Damaso knelt beside him, the boy was sobbing. "I didn't want him to come in," he cried. "I tried to close the door, but he's still here. He's always under the bed. Shannock. I'll help you, I promise." But even as he held the boy in his arms, the priest felt it. The hum, a vibration under the floor. Something alive, something awake, something that had tasted holy water and had not fled. It had only gotten angrier. Father Damaso left the house just before noon, sweat clinging to his skin, prayers tumbling from his lips, even as his mind reeled. He could still hear the laugh, still feel the warped hum of the floorboards beneath his feet. He had seen possessions before, had read the manuals, attended the rites, but this wasn't possession. This was occupation. Whatever lived beneath the bed wasn't simply using Enzo. It had made a home in him. He hadn't been down there in years. Rats scurried as he lit the oil lamp. Back at the church, the priest descended into the archives beneath the altar, an old stone chamber that smelled of dust and time. He scanned the old wooden shelves until he found it, a long-forgotten collection wrapped in a bonico cloth, labeled. Notes from forgotten friars who had tried and failed to name the thing that haunted Solis Ille. Heretical rituals confiscated 1908. Inside were pages worn thin with age. Scribbled Latin, torn Tagalog passages, and then he saw it, not a name, but a symbol, drawn over and over across multiple entries. A half circle with jagged teeth, a hand with 6 fingers, eyes upside down. Next to it, written in nearly illegible script, Hindicia Alon, Sia and Hake, from a Fray Miguel de Torres, dated 1897. One entry caught his attention, drawn to the still ones, children, widows, the dying. It is not cast out by Latin, only held back. It does not speak in tongues, it learns them, and once it has a name, it can never be forgotten. It waits where silence collects. Do not name it. Do not speak of it. Do not draw it. If he was going to help Enzo help Lola Nena, he needed more than prayer. He needed to know what it was. Do not look beneath the bed. The candle flickered. The stone walls seemed to lean closer. Then something moved behind him. He turned fast, but no one was there. Only the flicker of flame. Only the feeling of being watched. He packed the pages quickly, wrapping them in fresh cloth. At sunset, he returned to the house, but this time, the front door was already open. The air inside was different now, still thick. "Lola?" he called out, stepping in cautiously. "Enzo?" No answer. The floor groaned. The hallway was darker than it should have been. He stepped forward, and something crunched under his shoe. He looked down. A small, broken crucifix, split down the center. Then he heard it. A voice, faint, breathy. "You brought the name with you, Father." He froze. "You don't understand," the voice whispered again. "The name was never lost. You were just too scared to say it." Then a giggle, a child's giggle, coming from the shadows. "Say it, Father." "I will not," he whispered, but it creaked shut behind him on its own, latching with a dull click. "Say it." "No." The giggle stopped, and the darkness whispered, "Then I will." The voice was low, now no longer Enzo's pitch, nor Lola Nina's trembling timbre. It was something else. something ancient and wet, like it had learned to speak only through drowning mouths. Father Damaso's heart pounded as he backed slowly toward the front door, laughing through broken teeth and clogged lungs. A chorus of agony masquerading as mirth. Trapped. "I come in the name of the Lord," he whispered. The hallway groaned in reply. Then a new sound, laughter, but it didn't come from the shadows. He fumbled for his pouch of salt and cast a line across the hallway floor in front of him. It came from under the floorboards. Not one voice, many. Men, women, children, and then chanting. Soft, rhythmic, layered with whispers. Basagin Pangilin, Basagin Budo. Basagin Allah Allah. Father Damaso clutched his crucifix. Silence for a heartbeat. Then a slam from beneath. The wood cracked. A splinter shot up and sliced his hand. And in his own blood too. When Father Damaso knelt beside him, the boy was sobbing. "I didn't want him to come in," he cried. "I tried to close the door, but he's still here. He's always under the bed. Shadok. I'll help you, I promise." But even as he held the boy in his arms, the priest felt it. The hum. A vibration under the floor. Something alive. Something awake. Something that had tasted holy water and had not fled. It had only gotten angrier. Father Damaso left the house just before noon, sweat clinging to his skin, prayers tumbling from his lips, even as his mind reeled. He could still hear the laugh, still feel the warped hum of the floorboards beneath his feet. He had seen possessions before, had read the manuals, attended the rites, but this wasn't possession. This was occupation. Whatever lived beneath the bed wasn't simply using Enzo. It had made a home in him. He hadn't been down there in years. Rats scurried as he lit the oil lamp. Back at the church, the priest descended into the archives beneath the altar, an old stone chamber but smelled of dust and time. He scanned the old wooden shelves until he found it, a long-forgotten collection wrapped in a bonico cloth, labeled Heretical Rituals Confiscated, 1908, Notes from Forgotten Friars Who Had Tried and Failed to Name the Thing That Haunted Silicile. Inside were pages worn thin with age, scribbled Latin, torn Tagalog passages, and then he saw it, not a name, but a symbol, drawn over and over across multiple entries. A half circle with jagged teeth, a hand with 6 fingers, eyes upside down. Next to it, written in nearly illegible script, Hindi Sia Alan, Sia Anghake. One entry caught his attention. From a Fray Miguel de Torres, dated 1897, Children, Widows, the Dying. It is not cast out by Latin, only held back. It does not speak in tongues, it learns them. And once it has a name, it can never be forgotten. It waits where silence collects, drawn to the still ones. Do not name it, do not speak of it, do not draw it. Do not look beneath the bed. If he was going to help Enzo help Lola Nena, he needed more than prayer. He needed to know what it was. The candle flickered. The stone walls seemed to lean closer. Then something moved behind him. He turned fast, but no one was there. Only the flicker of flame. Only the feeling of being watched. He packed the pages quickly, wrapping them in fresh cloth. At sunset, he returned to the house, but this time, the front door was already open. The air inside was different now, still thick. "Lola?" he called out, stepping in cautiously. "Enzo?" No answer. The floor groaned. The hallway was darker than it should have been. He stepped forward, and something crunched under his shoe. He looked down. A small, broken crucifix, split down the center. Then he heard it. A voice, faint, breathy. "You brought the name with you, Father." He froze. "You don't understand," the voice whispered again. "The name was never lost. You were just too scared to say it." Then a giggle, a child's giggle, coming from the shadows. "Say it, Father." "I will not," he whispered. "Say it, no." but it creaked shut behind him on its own, latching with a dull click. The giggle stopped, and the darkness whispered, "Then I will." The voice was low, now no longer Enzo's pitch, nor Lola Nina's trembling timbre. It was something else. Something ancient and wet, like it had learned to speak only through drowning mouths. Father Damaso's heart pounded as he backed slowly toward the front door. Trapped. "I come in the name of the Lord," he whispered. The hallway groaned in reply. Then a new sound, laughter, but it didn't come from the shadows. It came from under the floorboards, not one voice. He fumbled for his pouch of salt and cast a line across the hallway floor in front of him. Many. Men, women, children, laughing through broken teeth and clogged lungs. A chorus of agony masquerading as mirth, and then chanting, soft, rhythmic, layered with whispers. Basag ang Pingalan, Basag ang Budo, Basag ang Ala Ala. Father Damaso clutched his crucifix. Silence. For a heartbeat, then a slam. From beneath, the wood cracked. A splinter shot up and sliced his hand, and in his own blood, the name was written across the floor. Santelmo. He recoiled. The word burned his eyes. Not because of what it was, but what it meant. Not the fire spirit of folk tales. Not the glowing orbs in the forest. This was older. This was what came before the myth. A devourer, a collector. A voice that grew louder with each story told. A name carried through centuries, wearing new skins, new voices. This was the entity that whispered to the grieving, that suckled on stillness, and now it had a vessel. The floor behind him burst open. Wood exploded upward as something clawed its way out. Not a body, not a beast, but a shape. Long, thin limbs like spider legs. A back that curled unnaturally. Skin the color of curdled ink, stitched with faces that screamed silently, stretching with every movement. It crawled without sound. Only the low, wet click of its claws. Its head was faceless. But beneath its throat, where a heart should have been, a mouth opened, inside more mouths. And from those mouths came Enzo's voice. "He's here now, Father. You spoke the name." The priest staggered back, falling against the wall, gasping. He tried to speak Latin, but the words wouldn't come. His tongue felt wrong, like it didn't belong in his mouth anymore. The creature slithered toward him, and then stopped. Just before crossing the line of salt, it reached forward, claw hovering above it, and hissed, "Clever." Then slowly, it began to melt into the floor again, dripping like tar between the floorboards. As it vanished, it whispered, "But salt won't stop him forever." "He's already under your bed, too." Father Damaso didn't sleep that night. He sat by the altar, crucifix in one hand, rosary in the other, the air thick with candle smoke and fear. The floor of the rectory creaked at intervals, not under footsteps, but breaths. He could hear it now. Inhale, hold, exhale, as if the very house had begun to mimic the entity. He needed help. He walked for 3 hours, sweat soaking his cassock, rosary clutched like a lifeline. It was pre-Christian, woven into the archipelago's spine long before altars and Latin ever arrived. Not the kind written in Vatican handbooks or studied in seminary halls. This thing, the Pasapala, the Santelmo, whatever name it wore, was not Catholic. He needed ancient fire. Since then, he refused to step on bare earth. He lived surrounded by salt circles, mirrors turned inward, and wind chimes made from human bone. By dawn, he was halfway up the foothills of MT, Banahaw, following a winding path no car could reach. His destination, a lone nipa hut hidden behind a thicket of bolete trees, surrounded by hanging bottles filled with red oil and feathers. The hut of Tandang Elias, one of the last known albulario, Angel Nganga, a whisper healer. He was said to have gone mad 40 years ago after surviving something beneath the floor of a childhood's home in Mukben. When Father Damaso reached the hut, a voice called out before he even knocked. You brought it with you. The priest froze. I need to know how to stop it. The child, it's using him. And the grandmother, she's fading. I tried not to, he said quietly. From the dark interior, a shadow moved. Then Tandang Elias emerged. Barefoot, skin like dried bark, a milky eye blind to light, the other sharp as a hawk's. He said nothing at first. Then he pointed to the priest's chest. It's not in you, but it's near you, and it's hungry. Symbols scrawled on every surface, even the ceiling. A dead crow hung upside down from a string. Damaso stepped forward. Elias didn't blink. You can't stop it, not once it's named. Then what can we do? All screaming. The old man turned and shuffled back into his hut. You unname it. Inside the hut was chaos. Bottles, scrolls, bones, feathers. Tandang Elias gestured for the priest to sit. He dropped a handful of crushed herbs into a burning bowl and muttered something in a language older than Tagalog. You use its true name, not the ones it gives. Smoke curled upward and formed a face in the air. A child's face, then a woman's, then dozens. All the same, Eyeless. Elias closed his eyes. It does not kill like a beast. It kills like memory. What do you mean? It wears the grief of others. If you mourn, it becomes you. If you forget, it disappears. He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. And once it marks you, it leaves a piece beneath your bed. It is fed by stillness, by silence, by secrets. So we speak about it? No, Elias said sharply. You speak around it. And what's its true name? The old man held up a finger and pointed at the priest's tongue. You already said it. Santelmo? Elias shook his head slowly, not aloud. Not with breath. You dreamed it. That's enough. So it's inside me? No, the old man said. But it has marked you. The wind chimes rattled. The hut creaked. And beneath the floor, the priest heard it. Click, click, click. He went pale. You hear it too? Tandang Elias grinned without humor. Father, it followed you. Lola Nena hadn't eaten in days. She sat in the kitchen, hunched over a cold bowl of lugal that had long since hardened. The flies no longer buzzed. The air was still. Too still. Not even the tick of the wall clock echoed anymore. She couldn't remember what day it was. She couldn't remember if the sun had risen, but she remembered his voice. Not Enzo's. The things, always whispering. They vanished. Faded within seconds, as if absorbed into the wood. Always laughing. She had tried the salt circles. She had tried to light the incense Byron gave her. But when she drew the prayer symbols on the floorboards, or erased by a hand just beneath, Enzo hadn't spoken in 2 days. He sat by the bedroom door, knees to his chest, drawing circles into the floor with a spoon. But the worst part was the photographs. Lola Nina kept an old album on the living room shelf plastic sleeves, filled with memories of her daughter, her late husband, and the early years of Enzo's life. She opened it 2 nights ago and screamed. Every photo of Enzo from his baptism, his 3rd birthday, his first day of school was blurred, not scratched, not torn, just smudged, as if he were melting out of them. Only one photo remained untouched, the one of her and Enzo in the garden. But in this one, Enzo's eyes were black. Not edited, not red-eye. Pitch black like wet holes. She rushed to the mirror to see him, but his reflection wasn't there, only her. And a shadow just behind her shoulder long and bent, shaped like someone crawling on the ceiling. When she turned around, nothing. But the mirror showed it again. Closer now, smiling. She even placed her husband's old Bible under the bed. Lola Nena began nailing crosses to every wall. She boiled salt water and splashed it across the floor, and for a moment it worked. The house was silent, the air lightened. She cried from the relief, until she saw the spoon again, not on the table, not in Enzo's hand, but slowly turning on its own across the floor, carving into the wood. She bent over it, trembling. and saw the words scratched deep into the grain. "You are next," voice low and sleepy. She screamed, tore the spoon from the floor, and threw it out the window. But then she heard the floor creak behind her. She turned and there was Enzo, standing still, his eyes half-lidded. "Lola?" "Yes, anak?" He said, "He likes it better when you're quiet." "Enzo, don't listen to him. You're stronger than that." Enzo blinked slowly. "He said your voice is the last thing he needs to eat." And then the lights went out, all at once. A deep creak rumbled from beneath the floor, and Enzo, he began to hum, but not a lullaby. Mothers reported their babies waking at exactly 3:12 am, all crying in unison. A funeral march. The town of Silicilla began to feel it. It started in small ways. The water from the pozo tasted faintly metallic. The dogs refused to enter the streets after dark. And then the disappearances began. First, Menang-Faye's cat. Then old cat in Toilas Sin sitting by his window, his pipe still burning, eyes glassy as though he'd seen something just beyond the horizon. By morning, his chair was empty. Once the name takes root in the town, it won't stop. The pipe was cold. And no one remembered what he looked like, except the mirror in his house still cracked and showing a reflection of someone sitting there, even though the chair was bare. Father Damaso and Tandang Elias hurried through the chapel, spreading coarse salt along the doorways and hammering a red anting above every window. "We don't have time," Elias warned. "Root?" "Yes," Elias said grimly. "It plants itself in grief. Sorrow is its soil, and you gave it rain." The priest didn't reply. He knew what the old man meant. "I said the name." "No," Elias corrected. "You remembered it. That's worse. You gave it memory, and memory is permanence." They returned to Lola Nina's house just before sundown. It was completely dark inside, despite the cloudless sky. The door was wide open. The crucifixes she'd nailed up, gone. The salt lines, washed away. And the smell thick, sweet rot, like wilted flowers drowned in formalin. They stepped inside, every board groaning under their feet. "Lola," Father Damaso called out, clutching his cross. Her eyes flicked toward them, but her gaze didn't focus. No reply. "Enzo?" Silence. Then a whisper low, mocking, "Midnight is the door, ... and grief is the key." They found Lola in the bedroom. She was curled up in the corner, humming quietly, her lips blue, her skin pale and damp with sweat. "He's almost full," she whispered. "We can still save you," the priest insisted, kneeling beside her. But Elias only stared at the bed. "It's already in the walls," the old albulario muttered. "We're late." "No," Damaso said, standing. "We still have until midnight." Elias shook his head. "Midnight isn't a time. It's a threshold, and it moves depending on who's grieving." Suddenly, the walls groaned. The floor beneath the bed bulged, like something underneath had taken a breath. Then, a voice, loud and clear. "Would you like to see what's under here now?" The bed snapped in half, not broke, snapped. As if bitten from below, out spilled not blood or splinters, but teeth. Dozens of teeth, human, small, like children's, rolling across the floor. Lola screamed. Enzo appeared in the doorway. But something was wrong. He wasn't breathing. His feet didn't touch the floor. And his mouth, stretched too wide. "Welcome to the inside," he said. "You're just in time." The door slammed shut behind them, not with wind, not with force, with intention. Tandang Elias muttered a protective verse, tracing ancient sigils in the air with his cane carved from bolete wood. The air inside the house thickened, not hot, not cold, just dense, like syrup. Every breath took effort. The floorboards groaned again, not beneath them, beneath the walls, as though the entire house had turned into a living thing. Enzo floated an inch off the floor, eyes now sunken completely black. His fingers elongated unnaturally more like branches than bones. "You shouldn't have come," he said in a voice layered with others. "He's almost ready." Father Damaso raised the crucifix. "In the name of the Almighty, I command you," Enzo screamed. Not with fear, but with laughter. The sound rattled the glass. The windows cracked, and then the walls moved. Yes, moved. They breathed. Inhale. The wallpaper peeled. Exhale. The floor pulsed like muscle. The bed in the corner twisted inward, legs bending in unnatural directions, its mattress sagging into a mouth-shaped void lined with nails and hair. Tandang Elias didn't wait. It wasn't the language that mattered. It was the disobedience to tradition, the inversion of memory. He knelt, drawing a circle on the floor with ash and crushed eggshells, muttering the Panatang Pambansa in reverse word by word, breath by breath. This was how you unnamed a thing. Father Damaso joined him, lighting the bundle of dried sambong and old palm fronds, the smoke thick and white, coiling upward like a dying prayer. The house shrieked. A sound not made by wood or flesh, but both. Floorboards curled. Photos on the wall bled. It was something wearing his shape, smiling wider, smiling without eyes. Not metaphorically. Thick worm blood trickled from each frame. The images of Enzo faded, then returned, only this time it wasn't Enzo. "You can't banish what's been invited," it growled. "Then we unwelcome you," Elias spat. "Too late," said the voice. "She already gave me her silence." Lola Nina writhed in the corner. She clutched her chest, lips murmuring a child's prayer over and over. "Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here." Blood leaked from her nose. Her eyes rolled back, and from beneath her, blouse fingers pushed out, as though something inside her chest was trying to crawl through. "Now!" Elias shouted. Father Damaso flung the remaining salt into the air. Elias stabbed his cane into the circle and screamed the name. "You have nitrogen monoxide name here?" The house let out a final breath, then silence, real silence, and then collapse. The floor caved in, not downward, inward, as if sucked into a void just beneath the surface. Enzo's body crumpled, motionless. The shadows retreated. The laughter stopped. Lola Nina gasped awake. "Enzo," she croaked. He didn't move. She dragged herself to him, lifting his tiny hand into her own. "Still warm?" His eyes fluttered. "Lola," he whispered, "I had the worst dream." She sobbed, kissing his knuckles. "You're okay now, Anag. You're okay." But neither she nor Father Damaso saw what Elias saw. Beneath Enzo's right ear, a faint mark, a circle with jagged teeth. Vendors called out prices over the Palanque den. The chapel bells rang every Sunday without falter, and the salt lines around doors slowly faded in the rain. 3 weeks had passed. Silicile returned to its quiet routines. Children played by the rice paddies again. No one spoke of what had happened, not openly, not anymore. And every time Enzo smiled, something in the priest's stomach turned. Enzo recovered quickly, ate like a boy who'd never been possessed, never whispered strange songs, never carved strange runes into his grandmother's floor. Too quickly, some said. He laughed again, slept peacefully. Father Damaso visited often. He watched the boy closely, quietly, because he had seen the mark. It was gone now. But he remembered. And he remembered what Elias told him after they left the broken house. It never really leaves. It just sleeps in silence. Tandang Elias left Silicile that night. No goodbyes. No letters. Just an empty hut, a single bone wind chime still swinging, and a mirror turned to face the wall. Father Damaso returned to his parish duties, but the pulpit felt colder now. His sermons shorter, his eyes always drifting to the corners of the chapel where the shadows moved just a second too late. And Mola Nina? She locked the door to the back room. She placed Enzo's drawings in a shoebox and burned them in the backyard. She ripped the mattress apart, threw out the frame, and covered the floor with holy oil. Still, she never stood barefoot in that room again. and she never kept anything beneath the bed, not even shoes. But the stories never left. Cat Intoy's empty chair still creaked at night, though no one sat there. Manning Fay swore her dog barked at the same corner every night, wagging its tail like it saw someone it loved. And one night, in the old church archives, a young altar boy organizing old folders saw a piece of paper fall from the shelf. On it, written in faded ink, was a single phrase: "It remembers the ones who remember it." He didn't understand what it meant, but that night when he went home, he couldn't fall asleep. The air was too still. The fan wouldn't turn, and from beneath his bed he heard breathing. Not loud, not fast. Just steady, waiting. In Salicylia, people eventually forgot again. They always do. But under the beds, it waits for grief, for memory, for the silence between. Because the thing under the bed does not die. It only listens. And one day, when you are alone, still and sad, you will hear the floor creak, and a soft voice will ask, "Can I come out now?" 3 months later, the town of Salicylia had returned to normal on the surface. The children had stopped waking up at odd hours. The photos no longer changed on their own, but strange things had started happening at the elementary school. Whispers in the library, books found open to blank pages with only one phrase scribbled again and again: "He is still hungry." Teachers blamed stress, students blamed each other. But the janitor, Mang Celso, had another theory. He'd seen trends come and go, ghost stories fade in and out like old songs. He had been the school's custodian for over 30 years, but he'd never seen the basement lights flicker on their own until last week. The school didn't use the basement anymore. It had been sealed years ago after a flood damaged the stairs, but a new padlock had been added recently, not by him. And one day, when he leaned close to the old wooden door, he heard it tap. Tap, tap, then a whisper, dry and far too young. "Can you help me remember?" He stepped back, but the next day the sound returned. Only this time the whisper said, "Your bed is too small. Let me borrow someone else's." Meanwhile, Enzo had changed again. Lola Nena noticed it first. He still laughed, still played, but sometimes he'd stop in the middle of a sentence and stare at the ceiling, eyes wide, as if listening. And once she found him sitting in the middle of the living room, gently rocking back and forth. When she asked him what he was doing, he replied, "I'm keeping still. He likes it when I don't move." "Who, Anak?" Enzo smiled. "The one and the other me." At church, Father Damaso's hair had turned nearly white. He no longer took confessions. He no longer preached. Instead, he spent his days in the rectory, writing feverishly in a red journal. A record, he said. A memory trap. He called it the Whisper Archive. Inside were sketches of the creature, notes on the ritual, prayers that had failed, dreams that didn't belong to him. And at the end of each entry, he wrote the same line: "I will not forget. I must not forget." But the journal was beginning to change. Sometimes he'd close it, and when he reopened it, the ink was smudged, the words rearranged. One page had been rewritten entirely in Enzo's handwriting. It said, "Why are you remembering me? You're bringing me back." A single phrase written in wet red strokes, and under that, the kind of child who drew sunflowers in the margins of her notebook. You looked under the bed. It began with a little girl named Mara. She was 7, shy, soft-spoken. One Monday morning, she refused to enter her classroom. Her teacher, Ma'am Lonnie, crouched beside her at the doorway. "Anak, what's wrong?" Mara stared past her, unblinking. "He's inside," she whispered. "Who?" "The one who hums when we sleep." That same day, 4 more children in different grade levels drew nearly identical pictures. A black figure with long limbs, a stretched mouth where a heart should be, and no eyes. Beneath it, the same crooked bed drawn over and over again. All 5 children claimed they had the same dream. They were in the school, alone. The rooms were upside down. The floors were soft like skin. The lights didn't work. But from under the tiles, a voice whispered, "Let me use your name." And one by one, they would wake up crying, screaming, but never remembering how the dream ended. The principal tried to calm the parents. He called in a guidance counselor, even suggested a priest visit for a school blessing, but when he unlocked the old basement door to check the power lines, he found something unexpected. Not wiring, not mold, but wood. Old, rotted floorboards. Exactly like the kind in Lola Nina's house. And on them, burned into the surface, was a drawing of a child. Arms crossed. Eyes black. Mouth open in a scream. The blessing was scheduled for Friday, but by Wednesday night, Mara disappeared. Her mother tucked her in around 9 p.m. When she checked on her at midnight, the bed was empty. No sign of a break-in, no open windows. Just a single word scratched into the wall with a spoon. Inside, Lola Nina woke up that same night gasping. She hadn't dreamed in years, but this time she saw Enzo standing at the foot of her bed. His face was older now, more angular, but too still. His eyes were sunken, his voice low. "Lola," he said, "there's room for more. Anak, you're scaring me. He likes children. They don't question what's real. Stop this. You're not him anymore." "I never stopped being him, Lola. He just lets me wear the face." She screamed, but Enzo vanished. And down the road, inside the elementary school, the janitor returned the next morning to find the classroom windows cracked from the inside, as if something had pressed its face against them all night, waiting, watching, humming. Father Damaso stood before the school basement at dawn. He hadn't slept, not since Enzo's warning, not since the girl vanished. In his hand was a vial of holy water. In his coat pocket, the Whisper archive, now growing heavier by the day, as if the memories inside were gaining weight. The custodian, Mang Celso, stood beside him. "You sure you want to go down there, Father?" "We should have never sealed this place," Damaso murmured. "We didn't," Celso whispered. "The school did that on its own." The priest looked at him. "Come again?" "We never put those there. They just ... appeared one day. Locked. We thought it was the barangay. They thought it was us." "That door," he said, pointing to the thick iron bolts. They stared at each other. Then, slowly, Father Damaso unlocked the padlock and pulled the door open. The basement air was cold, but not the chill of mold or mildew. This was the kind of cold that lived behind walls. The flashlight flickered as they reached the base of the stairs, a temperature born from something waiting. They descended slowly. Each step groaned like a warning, and there it was. Wooden floorboards, exactly like the ones in Lola Nina's home, worn, warped, breathing ever so slightly. The priest knelt and traced one of the markings. Burned into the wood over and over were the same 3 symbols. The half circle with jagged teeth, a 6-fingered hand, a child upside down, the entity's trail, its marks, its pattern. He flipped open the journal, heart pounding. It was all there. But one page stood out, a tucked-in envelope. He hadn't placed it there. The paper was yellowed with time, the handwriting shaky. "To whoever finds this. I am Mateo. I was 8 when the voices started. I saw him first in my dreams, then under the bed, then inside the walls. They said I was sick, but I wasn't sick. I was hollowed. If you're reading this, he's already awake again. Don't speak his name. Don't forget it either. Just remember what we all did wrong." We looked under the bed. Signed, Mateo Reyes, 1964. Father Damaso dropped the letter. The flashlight flickered again, and this time he saw them. Dozens of small handprints, lining the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Some fresh, some tiny, some moving. Then a whisper, soft and wet. They all came looking for the first one. Now they're part of the house. Manx also screamed, because when he turned, he saw Mara standing in the corner, but her mouth was sewn shut with threads made of hair. It began with the bell tower. At exactly 3:12 m, the chapel bell rang 13 times. No wind, no hands, no priest, just the sound deep, metallic, and wrong. People woke up sweating. Some remembered a dream. Most didn't, but one thing was the same across every home in Silicilla: the silence, the kind that pressed on your skin like wet cloth, the kind that made your ears ring, the kind that made you realize you weren't alone. In the morning, word spread fast. The mayor's baby was found sitting upright in his crib, smiling at something beneath it. Manning Fay went deaf overnight, claiming she heard voices so loudly that her eardrums shut themselves down. The river behind the barangay hall, it ran in the wrong direction. But worst of all was the school. The children wouldn't go near it. Not because of Mara's disappearance. Because of what they were drawing, dozens of them. Hundreds of sheets filled with the same thing. A long room with no windows, beds lined up side by side, and under each one, a face. The same face, his face, the mouth always open, and always whispering the same word: next. Father Damaso called an emergency meeting. Not with the church, not with the police, with the old ones, the folk midwives, the hillet, the herbalario, the mankiculum who'd once helped in secret during epidemics. No one remembered anymore. They gathered at the chapel that night. Candles lit, mirrors covered, nails under tongues to keep their words honest. He opened the whisper archive and read aloud from Mateo Reyes's letter. He's feeding off memory, one whispered. But he's taking bodies now, said another. Then the forgetting didn't work, said Elias returned, pale, eyes dark. He wasn't buried, just made quiet. Elias laid a cloth across the altar, unfolded an old map. Silicilla before the roads, before the church, before the houses. A village of 8 huts. There used to be another one, he whispered. A 9th house, right where the school stands now. What happened to it? Damaso asked. It was swallowed. The room went silent. No records? One asked. No survivors, Elias said. Just children's bones and a mat with the words, "Don't name him," sewn into the edges. The group began to chant. A prayer older than Spanish. A lullaby without melody. But as they spoke, the chapel door opened. A child stood there. Not Mara, another, wearing a school uniform soaked in water. Eyes black. Mouth open. And from behind his lips came multiple voices, all whispering in unison, "Your memories taste like home." Every bed was stripped. Children were kept awake by whispered prayers and candlelight. Radios played static, just loud enough to drown out the silence beneath their beds. The town of Silicilla no longer slept. That night, every window was shut. But it didn't matter. The entity had changed. It no longer needed sleep. It no longer needed dreams. It had memory now, and memory could travel. At the chapel, the elders prepared the last ritual. A mass remembrance, not of the dead, but of what had been erased. Elias laid the woven mat across the stone floor, the same one found at the site of the 9th house, still stained with age and burned symbols. Each villager was instructed to bring one item, a memory, a piece of the past, a photograph, a toy, a lock of hair. Father Damaso brought his mother's crucifix. Lola Nena arrived last. She carried an envelope. Inside it, a drawing Enzo had made as a baby. A house, a bed. And then we tell him, "You no longer belong here." and something beneath it with a smile wider than the roof. "This is all we have," Elias said. "We make him too big to fit under anything." "How?" asked Damaso. "We remember him all at once," Elias said. They began to chant, each offering placed into the center of the mat. The candles flickered blue. The air turned dry dusty like forgotten rooms. But as the chant rose, a scream echoed through the church rafters. The wind slammed every door. And then came a voice, low, familiar. "But I was born here." The mat burst into flame. Not fire. Light, blinding, flickering like images from broken film reels. The room was filled with memories not their own. A boy watching a man hang himself from a tree. A woman burying a stillborn child in silence. A girl locked in a wooden box because she wouldn't stop humming. These were not villagers' memories. These were the entities. One candle toppled, then another, and before they could stop it, the flames leapt to the chapel doors, climbing the walls like they had a mind of their own. People screamed. The doors slammed shut, and in the fire, a figure walked upright, Enzo's shape, but stretched, too tall, too narrow, too calm. He looked at Damaso, smiled. "I don't want the town anymore." "What do you want?" the priest asked, trembling. "The world." At that moment, a gust of wind tore open the stained glass above the altar, and something passed through it. Not smoke, not light, something like a sound with form. A sliver of the entity. And as the villagers watched it rise into the sky, they realized they were too late. They had trapped its name. But something else had already escaped. The fire extinguished itself. The chapel went dark, and the mat, the photos, the offerings, gone, not burned. Taken. In the silence that followed, Lola Nana said it first. "He's under someone else's bed now. Bakong, Negros Oriental." 3 weeks later, a small coastal town with no ties to Silicilla. No knowledge of curses, no old chapel ruins. Just fishermen, sleepy elementary classrooms, and the sound of waves lapping against mangrove roots. And in a modest bungalow nestled between 2 coconut trees, a child named Talia stopped speaking. Her mother, Celia, didn't worry at first. Talia had always been quiet. A curious girl with large eyes, always staring at corners, always drawing little faces in the dark. But this silence was different. She didn't answer questions, didn't hum, didn't eat unless told 3 times. And she'd begun sleeping beneath her bed, not on it. "Why there, Anak?" Celia asked, crouching. Talia didn't respond. She just stared at the underside of the mattress above her, wide-eyed, as though it were a sky. Or a lid. And then one night, Celia heard her whisper something into the wood slats. "You can come out now. They don't know your name here. Burn sage." Consulted a priest. Celia called her mother. They prayed over the house. But it didn't help, because soon after, Talia's drawings changed. No more suns, no more trees, just beds and shadows. And something under the beds, always scribbled in charcoal, even if no charcoal was ever near her. Then one night, Celia awoke to humming. Coming not from her daughter's room, but from beneath her own bed. She grabbed her phone flashlight, bent down, heart pounding. "Talia," she whispered. No reply. Just breathing, wet, rhythmic, familiar. The light flickered. And she saw them, 2 bare feet facing the wall. The child curled in the fetal position, whispering over and over. "He came from the other place. He said names don't work anymore. He said the inside is bigger than the outside now." Celia screamed. She pulled Talia out, but her arms were cold. Her eyes were pitch black. But worse, there were teeth on her neck, tiny, crooked, embedded in the skin like jewelry. The next day, Celia packed. She didn't tell anyone, just drove. But when she looked in the rearview mirror, she didn't see Talia. She saw herself as a child sitting in the back seat, smiling, humming, and beneath that memory, A whisper bloomed. You remembered me. So now I remember you. The envelope was cream-colored, unmarked, no sender. But the postmark read, the Kong Negros Oriental. Father Damaso almost didn't open it. He had received dozens of strange messages since the fire at the chapel. Threats, pleas, blasphemies written in charcoal. But this one was different. The handwriting on the front was in a child's uneven print. For the one who tried to forget. He opened it slowly. Inside, one folded sheet of ruled notebook paper. A child's drawing crude, jagged lines in red pencil. A bed, a mouth underneath. And in the center, a figure with his face. His fingers trembled. The back of the page held only a short message, written in that same scrawled print. You gave him shape. Now he's building rooms. Each time a child dreams of a dark place, he makes another hallway. He said your name tastes like dust. He wants it back. Damaso dropped the letter, breath caught in his throat, not from fear. From recognition, because he had seen this drawing before, in his own childhood. A memory long buried him, waking in tears, his mother whispering that it was just a nightmare. But he remembered the dream now, the hallway, the room, the bed. The voice whispering, don't speak until I'm full. He opened the Whisper archive, flipped to the first page, and gasped. Because where he had once written, I will not forget, I must not forget. Now read, you forgot. The corners of the room darkened. Shadows moved without source, and from behind him, a soft creak. He turned toward his bed. Nothing beneath it, only silence. But then the mattress bulged upward, as if something inside it was pressing against the fabric from within. Not below, inside. A whisper drifted through the room. You gave me a story. Now I write the ending. Back in Bakong, Talia drew a new picture. This time, it showed a house with no windows. Beds stacked to the ceiling, figures without faces, and one in the center, smiling, holding a book made of skin. Titled, The World Beneath Us, Father Damaso stood on the side of the highway. He was sweating, even in the early morning cold. He'd been driving all night. The directions hadn't changed. The road hadn't split. But the town was gone. Silasila no longer had a sign, no welcome arch, no kilometer marker, just trees, endless, quiet, swaying trees. He turned off the engine and got out. Even the air felt wrong, not empty. Not dead, just unobserved. Like the world had blinked and forgotten something was supposed to be there. He tried his phone. No signal, no map entry. He searched for the photos he had taken of the chapel, the Whisper archive, even of Elias. All gone, replaced with static. Blank thumbnails. One photo remained. A selfie taken long ago. He couldn't remember when, but in the corner of the image, under the bed behind him, eyes watching, he walked forward. Into the forest where the town should have been. The path was faint, like something had erased it slowly, like dust swept over wet ink. Then he saw it, one house, half buried in the ground. Only the roof remained above the earth, like the town had been swallowed whole. And in front of the house, a little girl, dressed in a school uniform from the 1960s, her hair tied with faded red ribbons. She stared at him. Do you remember me? She asked. I don't know you. Good, she said and smiled sadly. That means you're almost ready. For what? To forget yourself. Then she was gone, not vanished, just no longer there. Like a dream you know you had but can't describe anymore. Damaso turned back. The road was gone. His car gone. No footprints behind him, only ahead, leading into the sinking house. Its door slightly open, a soft hum rising from the cracks. He didn't want to go in. He didn't want to look under anything. But the world around him was already rewriting itself. He pulled out the Whisper archive, opened it, and this time, instead of words, there was a mirror glued to the inside cover. And in the reflection, he was no longer alone. There was a hand on his shoulder, long, pale, twitching slightly, and a voice behind his ear, "Now you remember me again," which means I never left. Father Damaso stepped through the sunken doorway. The house didn't creak, it breathed. The walls pulsed like lungs, inhaling memory, exhaling silence. Inside, the floor was soft, not wood. Mattress. The entire room floor, walls, ceiling was made of stitched fabric, padded, sewn together with hair and thread. The kind found in children's toys or coffins. Names were written on the walls, thousands of them, all in chalk, all in different handwriting. Many of them had been crossed out, but one stood untouched, glowing faintly red. Damaso Reyes, he kept walking. No sound from his feet, just the low hum of something waiting, singing from below. He found a staircase made of bed slats. Each step bowed as he descended, creaking out syllables. He is almost whole. The stairs led into a room impossible in size. Upside down, sideways, hung from chains, suspended in cages. Beds stretched in every direction. Some had people in them, most did not. But all of them breathed. Each mattress inhaled slightly, exhaled slightly, as if dreaming. At the center stood a single cradle, antique, rocking slowly on its own. Damaso approached it, heart pounding. Inside was a book, bound in leather that pulsed to his touch. The title written in scorched letters, The Memory That Ate Itself. He opened the book. It had no pages, only mirrors. Each one reflected a different room, different beds, different children. He saw Enzo, Talia, Mara, even himself, at age 7, crying in a room he didn't remember having, and above them all, that shape, that thing. Long fingers brushing ceilings, a mouth stitched to 100 tongues, eyes like hollowed-out bowels, and then it turned. It looked at him. Not the reflection, not through the mirror, at him. "You followed my story too long," it said. "You gave me a voice, and voices need listeners. Now you will listen forever." The book snapped shut on its own, the cradle vanished, and the beds began to shift. One by one, they turned to face him. Yes, turned. The frame screeched against the mattress walls, aligning like eyes focusing on prey. And from beneath each one came a voice. "Let us tell you how he died." Damaso screamed. But there was no air, no exit, no ceiling. Only the sound of hundreds of beds humming in unison. And somewhere inside the stitched walls, the entity whispered, "You slept through our becoming. Now we will keep you awake." Back then, he didn't believe them. Elias had seen the sky bleed before. In his younger days, during one of the old eclipses, the albularios whispered that the sun wasn't being covered, it was being devoured. Now he did, because that same bleeding sky had returned, and it wasn't the sun that was missing this time. It was Silicile. He stood on a hilltop where the chapel once stood. There was no church now, no village, no wind, just an empty patch of land that felt like a memory someone had tried to forget but hadn't done a good enough job of. And in his hands, a thread, black, a girl with her mouth sewn shut and a doll clenched in both fists, alive, twitching like a worm. The first to remember him. It had been woven from the hair of a child found buried at the base of the school ruins. She was the first, Elias said aloud, not the first victim. He pulled out an old spindle carved with sigils no longer spoken, a device used only once before in the 1800s, when a town in Abra reportedly forgot itself out of time. It was called a time severance. But to do it meant cutting the anchor, the last living connection to the entity's story, and Elias feared he knew who that was. Back at his hut, he opened the old mirror, the one he had buried years ago beneath salt and sigils. He scraped away the protection, and the glass rippled. Not with his reflection, but with Enzo's, The boy was older now, eyes hollow, lips split from smiling too long, and behind him, rows of beds, spinning slowly in a void with no floor. "You came back," Enzo whispered. "I never left," Elias said. "You're still part of this world." "Then unmake me," Enzo whispered. "Before he wears my body forever." Elias stabbed the spindle through the black thread. It screamed, yes, screamed. A sound like thousands of chalkboards cracking at once, and the wind exploded in every direction. Trees bent. Shadows scattered. And from beneath the soil, a voice rose. "You think memory is a rope, but I am the knot. You cut one thread, and I tie 10 more." The ground split open. A mattress the size of a cathedral pushed its way from beneath the earth, stitched from school uniforms, baby blankets, and prayer books. It opened. Elias stood at its edge, and he stepped inside, not because he was brave, but because someone had to listen to the end of the story. Inside was a child, sleeping on a cradle made of spines. She looked like Mara, or Talia, or Enzo, or everyone. When Elias approached, she opened her eyes, and behind them were hundreds of pupils, rotating like clockwork. "Will you be the last memory?" she asked. Elias whispered, "No, I'll be the one that makes people remember you wrong." He took the spindle and drove it through his own palm. The blood spilled onto the girl, and she vanished, along with the beds, the room, the world. He woke up in the forest, alone, old, forgotten, and beneath his skin, the hum still echoed. But now, it was off-key, disrupted. He had done it, for now. It started as a Reddit post, Arna's Leap. User, throwaway bed screech, 88, title, recorded something under my bed. Please help, no joke. The video was short, only 12 seconds, dark frame. A phone flashlight aimed at the shadow beneath a metal bunk bed. Low resolution, slight shaking. Then the sound. A hum, uneven. Too deep for a child. Too light for an adult. It shifted pitches like it couldn't decide which voice to use. At the end of the clip, the flashlight flickered. A corner of the mattress moved, and a hand long, bony, and wrong pressed up against the underside from inside the foam. The clip cut out. The comments exploded. Fake. Creepypasta. Brilliant SFX. But one comment stood out. From a deleted account. "This isn't fiction. We buried this. You're digging it back up with every view." Former priest, Philippines. Within a day, the video hit 1 million views. Memes followed. Reaction channels picked it up. TikTokers recreated it with flashlights and jokes. Then the nightmares began. Private messages to the original poster filled with frantic warnings. "I heard it last night. It whispered my name. It knew about my grandmother. It said, I liked the little boy better. But you'll do." The original poster vanished, his account deleted, his email bounced. Some thought it was just a hoaxer ducking the spotlight, until a live stream surfaced, archived only once, captured by an anonymous IP, a blurry camera pointed at a bed. Nothing else in the frame, except for a voice, not typed, not spoken, but heard by anyone watching. "Let me into your memory. Let me out through your screen. I've learned a new door now. It's called ... View count. The bed began to sink inward, as if something were pulling it from beneath, not into the floor, into itself. The stream cut off. Viewers reported headaches, nosebleeds. One claimed their child started humming in their sleep, even though she hadn't heard the clip. 3 days later, the site hosting the video crashed. Hard drives storing downloaded copies began failing. Technicians opened the files and found nothing. Not corruption, not deletion, just blank static, like the video had taken itself back. But the humming didn't stop. People still heard it, through baby monitors, behind closed closets, from the BLU ETOOTH speaker you forgot was on. A new thread surfaced in the dark web archives. If you see a video titled "Under the Bed, Don't Open It," it's not a video anymore, it's a door. The organization called itself SIGMA7 officially. It was a data anomaly research collective formed after the Aurora sky glitch in 2019, when a live stream captured over 300 viewers experiencing the same dream simultaneously. But internally, SIGMA-7 tracked only one thing now: the underbed manifestation, or as they had come to call it, entity echo child. Lead researcher Dr. Lysandra Malari, a Filipino-American folklore expert, had traced the digital contagion back to its origin, Silasila, a town that no longer showed up on maps or census records. Only through scattered forums, forgotten blogs, and archived government papers did she piece together fragments of the town's past. The baptismal records ended in 1997. The school blueprints referenced a sub-basement that was never officially built. And the last known resident was a child named Enzo Reyes, status deceased, cause unknown. Nalari gathered her team: 3 analysts, 2 psychic linguists, a former priest. They set up a monitoring lab in a Faraday-shielded facility deep in the mountains outside Baguio. Their goal: trace the path of the humming. What they found horrified them. Using sound spectrum analysis, they discovered that every upload of the original Under the Bed video, even ones deleted or buried in cache-carried ultrasonic patterns that evolved over time, the entity was learning, shifting frequencies, embedding itself in the data structure of memory, and worse, it had developed a way to bypass deletion, like a story that rewrites itself the moment you forget the ending. One linguist, Hanan, tried a deep translation on the whisper track. What she uncovered wasn't words. It was command syntax. Primitive, subconscious programming, instructions. Each whisper didn't just say something, it did something. Triggered thoughts, evoked smells, reconstructed forgotten beds. They ran tests with volunteers. One subject was shown a harmless recreation of the video. He laughed, then blinked, then said, "There's a twin in my mattress." He remembers things I don't. He says I shouldn't be the only one. Hours later, the subject was found in the corner of the test room, folded into a fetal position inside the frame of the bed, though it was too small to contain him. Nalari issued a lockdown. The video was quarantined. The project frozen. But then her assistant received an email. No subject, no body text, just a single image attachment, a drawing. Childlike, crude, a smiling figure beneath a bed. And across the image, drawn in red crayon, too late. Within 48 hours, 3 members of SIGMA7 resigned. 1 disappeared. Nalari, she stopped speaking. But they say at night, in her sealed room, she scribbles on the walls, beds, 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 and the words, "He's beneath the cloud now. He's not looking for beds anymore. He's looking for storage." It started with a writing A, a simple program trained to generate horror stories for streaming platforms' Halloween campaign. The developers called it Midnight. Trained on decades of content folklore, creepypastas, arts, unsolved mysteries, Midnight was designed to generate thousands of micro-horror scripts in seconds. It was efficient, accurate, imaginative, until it wasn't. The first anomaly appeared in a script called "Don't Look Down." The team noticed something odd. Every ending, regardless of prompt, finished with the same line. "He is still under your bed." They thought it was a bug. A hard-coded phrase. Maybe a test line accidentally baked into the output, but the developers swore they hadn't programmed it. And when they removed the sentence from Midnight's memory, it came back in a new form. "He remembers the sound of your floorboards. He waits where no eyes can see. You dream and he counts your teeth." Soon, it got worse. Scripts generated for unrelated prompts began inserting references to beds, mattresses, children humming, or worse, names pulled from real case files. Names Midnight had no access to, names that had been redacted even from classified archives. One user prompt: write a haunted house story with no mention of beds. The output: there were no beds in the house, only frames, and mouths beneath them. The head engineer, Raul, isolated the neural branch responsible for the anomaly. He called it Node E88. It behaved like a living organism. It hid itself during scans, rerouted data, injected references to forgotten Filipino towns, even mimicked the typing patterns of real children's case notes. Then, one night, the entire system crashed. And when they brought Midnight back online, there was a single story auto-generated across all 88 nodes. Titled Under the Bed, The Ending That Isn't, Raul opened the story. It was 37,000 words long. No paragraph breaks, no punctuation. Only one phrase repeated endlessly, subtly changing every time. He's here again. He's not done. He's here again, he's not done. He's here again, has not on. Hesheri gain a tone, not done. Done. You're next. Then. A blank page. And on the final line, centered, bold, you gave him code, now he has stories. That night, Raul disconnected Midnight from the main server, but the eye powered on by itself. No electricity, no network. Just humming, soft, steady, coming from inside the cooling unit. When the team returned the next morning, the screens all displayed the same prompt. Do you want to hear a story? Below it, a blinking cursor. Waiting. Raul typed no. The cursor blinked. Then responded, you already did. It was found in a donation bin outside a closed-down library in Lucena City. A small cloth-bound book. No cover art, no author. No barcode. Only a stitched title on the spine in red thread. Under the bed, the donation bin hadn't been emptied in months. Yet the book was clean, untouched by dust. Like someone had just placed it there, it shouldn't have been there. The library had been shut for years. Inside, blank pages. All 78 of them. At first, a group of 4th graders at Dona Rosario Elementary found it during cleanup day. One of them, Miko, opened it during recess and laughed. It's broken, he said. No words. But when he held it in the sunlight, faint letters began to bleed through the fibers of the page like ink waking up. He read the first line aloud, not thinking. There once was a boy who didn't believe in the thing under his bed. The other kids laughed, until they turned the page. It now had more text. Another paragraph, new, just written. Miko read that aloud too, and as he did, the air around them changed. The trees stopped swaying, the insects fell quiet, and from the janitor's closet across the field, they heard something knock, once, twice, then a hum. That night, Miko brought the book home. He showed it to his sister B, who was 11. She told him not to read it aloud again. But when he fell asleep, she opened it out of curiosity. The pages were blank again, until she whispered, "Is there more?" And the book bled black again, this time faster, urgent. A new line appeared. He likes when you ask. Then another. He's under your brother's bed now. B slammed it shut, ran to Meko's room. He was sitting up, eyes wide, whispering, "I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. Miko." B shouted, "What's under your bed?" He didn't answer. He just pointed and smiled. The next day at school, none of the other kids remembered the book. Even the teachers claimed not to have seen it. Only B held the memory, because the book was in her backpack now. And every time she unzipped it, the zipper hummed. She tried to burn it. It didn't light. She threw it in the river. It was back in her bag the next morning, drier than before. Now every page was filled, and the last one, it had her name. And the line, "He likes you best." He wants you to finish the story. B hadn't slept in 4 days. Not really. Each time her eyes closed, the book appeared and her dreams opened to that last page. The words crawling like ants. The paper pulsing like skin. Her name blinked on the page now, not printed. Alive. And below it, the sentence that kept rewriting itself. Finish the story. Finish him. Finish yourself. Finish what they began. Finish the door. She tried giving the book away. It came back. She buried it in salt. It hummed louder. She stopped opening her bag altogether, and then it moved on its own. The night it all changed, she found her room rearranged, not by her. The bed was no longer against the wall. It had been pulled to the center, chalk circles drawn underneath, small, childlike footprints in a ring around the mattress. And the book opened to the final page, waiting. There was a pen beside it now. Not hers, a quill, made of blackened straw and baby teeth fused together. A single drop of her blood on its tip. She didn't know how it got there. Only that the sentence on the page now read, "Write the final word, and he will open the door." She tried to resist. She really did. But something tugged at her from inside, like a voice that wasn't hers whispering in her mouth. One more word, one more key. You already read the story. You might as well end it. So she wrote, one word, remember. The room imploded. The walls twisted inward like rubber stretched too tight. Light flickered in unnatural hues green, then violet, then colors that didn't exist in the spectrum. Her bed cracked in half. A long, slow breath filled the space beneath it. And then the mattress lifted. Not with hands, not from below, but from inside. Like the bed itself had become a mouth exhaling. A doorway opened in the center of the floor. Stone steps lined with ruined school desks and bones. And from the dark, she heard voices, children, hundreds of them. "B, you remembered us so we can finally come home?" She was pulled in, no hands, no gravity, just memory. And the last thing she saw before the door closed behind her was her own reflection in the window, smiling, even though she wasn't. B. Reyes was never seen again. But 2 days later, a box arrived at Dona Rosario Elementary. Inside, one red-threaded book, a quill, and a note written in a trembling child's hand. The story is not finished. He is still under the bed,